Hello and welcome. If this is your first time with us, thanks for stopping by. You are listening to Choose to Endure, the show dedicated to the back of the pack runners, where we share stories, interviews, gear, and training tips specific to the tail end heroes of the ultra universe. If you haven't had a moment to do so yet, please consider heading over to your favorite podcast app, hit follow, rate the show, and if you're getting something of value, leave a review and let others know. My name is Richard Gleave. I've been running ultras since 2017. I've taken on and finished numerous distances now, all the way up through 220 miles, and I am unashamedly a member of the back of the pack, just like many of you. Now, on today's episode, we are really thrilled to have Mr. Victor Ballesteros join us. Victor is the founder of Victory Sportdesign, a boutique company well known for creating innovative and practical race gear specific to ultra running. And we'll definitely get into that here in a minute. But he's also race director for the Tamalpa Headlands 50K out in the Bay Area. And on the side, has become something of a renowned aid station announcer at the prestigious Western States 100 race. As well as being a business owner and race director, Victor is also a pretty accomplished ultra runner in his own right and has a wealth of experience to draw on over many years of racing, including a notable second-place finish at the inaugural Tahoe 200 back in 2014 and a 12th place finish at Western States in 2009. So today we're going to dive into Victor's journey, his contributions to the ultra running community, and hopefully get some of the insights he's gained along the way. Stay with us. We're going to be right back.
Discover raw, inspiring stories from runners who've been right where you are. This is the Choose to Endure Ultra Running Podcast with your host.
He's English, not Australian.
Richard Gleave.
Mr. Victor, thank you so much for taking a short break from your variety of interests and joining us on the show here. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure and an honor to have somebody actually say, "Hey, Victor, tell me about your running," or "Tell me about something that, is interesting in your life."
Yes. Well, actually, you've just led brilliantly into my first question, so thank you. Yeah. Can you share with us kind of how you got into ultra running in the first place? What drew you into the sport?
So I have always been a runner ever since I was a little kid, running away from my parents as a young one. My dad really, I have him to thank. I mean, my mom too, but my dad was a bit of an adventurer, and there was no valley too far to go down into or mountain too high to climb. And sometimes he would bring me on excursions that a parent shouldn't be bringing their 7-year-old on. but yeah, I started running and high school, and while I was in college, I went to school for art. So there really wasn't much of an athletic program at the school that I was going to. But I did 5Ks, 10Ks, road stuff, but nothing really to note. It was for me. It was something that I loved doing. And then I stumbled upon the Dipsy. So the Dipsy Trail here in Marin County, and the iconic race, if some of you know it, or if you don't know it, it's the second oldest foot race, second to Boston.
Oh, right.
It has its own unique story, but in a nutshell, I wanted to run the race, and I just discovered that was probably one of the most beautiful trails that I think I've ever been on. And I've been on a lot of trails, but that trail starts in a small little town called Mill Valley and goes up and over the south slope of our favorite mountain here, Mount Tamalpais, and drops down to the beach, Stinson Beach, and it's a 6.8. But you take shortcuts. And they have handicaps, and it's a mad rush because they handicap it by gender and age.
Right.
So you have older women, younger boys, older men start ahead of
Yeah.
The youngsters. They're like the 20 to 20 to, or the 19, 20 to 30s, both men and women. And so you have to really pass hundreds and hundreds of people to even get close to the front of the pack. But by virtue of running that race, I eventually discovered that there was a double Dipsy. And I used to never, ever imagine that I would want to run more than like a 10K. To me, it just seemed like, hey, that's good enough. The more time on my feet, it just wasn't, at that time, it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But because I loved the single Dipsy so much, I thought, you know what, I wouldn't mind going one direction and then turning around and coming back the other direction.
All right. Yeah.
And I surprised myself by doing pretty good. And I thought, wow, I actually have some sort of a propensity for longer distance and more rugged, not flat running, but, hills and downhills and technical running. So then I discovered there was the quad Dipsy.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, okay, so we go to the beach, we go back to Mill Valley, back to the beach, and back to Mill Valley. Probably the shortest and hardest ultra. The shortest, hardest ultra. Not the hardest ultra, but the shortest that is hardest. 20.2 miles or something like that. And I did really well. I mean, I really thought like, oh my God, what just happened? I was second.
Oh, wow. Well done.
And it was my first ultra. And, I really had no idea what I was doing. And this was before we really had, like, you could look up blogs and things like this. It was 2006.
Oh, I was going to say, what kind of year are we talking? Yeah. So we're a little way back here. Yeah.
Yeah. 2006. And so I actually had to go online and try to find out, like, how do you run this distance? And, there was mention of, water, carrying water with you. And I thought, carrying water, what a hassle. Yeah. Who carries water when they're running? So actually I devised a little, my wife describes it as like a hamster, like for drinking, but it's like, I took a water bottle and I took like a little fanny pack and I flipped the bottle around and I put like, I absconded her, she had gosh, what was the name of the company back in the day that did the bladders? And so, but anyway, I took the hose
like
from
a
her
Camelback or something.
Yes,
like
Camelback.
Camelback, yeah.
And I devised something so that I could just take the hose, drink, and then put it back in the belt.
Oh.
And because I felt like, why do I have to carry something in my hands? That just sounds so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that was my first foray into taking something for running and creating it to fit what I needed. But from that point on, I just thought, wow, this is cool. I can do this. I can really get into this. And, and it definitely helped that there was that motivation of, oh, if I do this or I do that in my training, I could probably be better. And, that was really the beginning of the end.
Yeah. And it looks like you went and you upped the ante a little bit from there and started doing some 50Ks and 50 milers and sort of work your way up from there.
Yeah, it was 2009, as you mentioned, was the year that I got into Western States through Miwok 100.
Right.
And it was a very interesting progression because I was still figuring out my ultra legs. And, I did, I believe it was the Way Too Cool 50K. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have done that had I not run into a fellow runner who's passed away, is no longer with us, but he asked if I was going to run the race. And I said, no, I'd love to. And he says, well, I can't. And I can give you my bib. I talked to the race director and she says, I can give my bib to whoever I want as long as you let her know. And so I thought, okay, yeah, sure. I'll do that race. And it went great. I mean, I did really well and I was really proud of my finish there. And then I thought, well, there's the American River 50 miler. I hadn't done that 50 miler. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll do that. It's great training because I signed up for Miwok 100K. And Miwok 100K was going to be my first 100K. So after American River, again, I was pretty happy, pretty satisfied with my finish there.
Yeah.
And then Miwok came, and the day of the race was this massive storm here in Marin. And it was so intense that you run along a ridge that overlooks the ocean, and the wind was literally blowing the rain straight up. So I had rain coming straight up my face. But again, I did really well there and earned a ticket. And I have to say that back then, you know, it may sound like, oh my God, you're so fast, or you were, whatever. People have got really fast now. I mean, you know, I there's no way I could at that age compete with the same people now.
Yeah.
Which is really amazing. I love it. I love seeing how the competitive fields have just flourished. And honestly, I even think that like for folks who maybe were like middle and back of the packers then as well, I think that just with the training methods that we have available to us now, the gear that we have available to us now, I think that everybody has actually kind of upped the ante for their own performances and how it benefits them. But yeah, I got into Western States and never knew what it was going to be like past 62 miles.
Yeah, it looks like that was your first 100 too. So
that was my first 100.
What a way to start. Yeah. Was there a lottery at that point, or were you got your ticket and you're in?
I got it. So Miwok was a golden ticket race.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah.
And so I got in through Miwok by placing second there. Yeah. And, you know, I just, at that time, I just still was having a fun time running, and I had no real goal. I just wanted to enjoy myself. I did all the training that I felt I needed to do. You know, I've been an actor, performer, and to me, it was very much like preparing for a part in a play. You know, you learn all your lines and your blocking, your songs if it's a musical.
Yeah.
But then the moment the show starts, you kind of don't think about it, and you just step right out on stage and you just do it. And I always felt like running in an event was very much like that. You have some nerves going right beforehand. You have some nerves, but then once you step out on the stage, it's like, okay, well, here we go.
Yeah. I've practiced, I've repeated the lines, I've run the training, and so I just go execute and have fun with it at this point, and adapt if needs be when weird stuff happens mid-performance or mid-race. And they do.
Right.
They always do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Problem solvers.
That's right. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, so we definitely want to get into more of your Western States and Headlands too at some point here during our chat. But I did want to kick off our discussion, if you will, with a little bit about Victory Sportdesign, because I came across your company online. I think it's absolutely fantastic, the products you offer.
Thank you.
So how did Victory Sportdesign come about? When did that whole idea germinate with you, and what really inspired you to go start the company?
So, as mentioned, I've always been a tinkerer. My dad was an architectural engineer. He passed away about 5 years ago, but yeah, he was an architectural engineer. And so I was always around that sort of atmosphere of building something, designing something, finding out what works, what doesn't work. And so it was Western States that was the catalyst for Victory Sportdesign. I have a really good friend, Mark Gilligan, who is the mastermind of Ultra Sign Up, and he's passed that torch along to others. And he was going to pace me and crew with my wife Jenna. And again, I discovered, I need drop bags.
Yeah,
what is that? Why do I need that?
It's a drop bag. Yeah,
I have a crew. I have people coming along with it because I'd never used one, because I always had a crew. And I always was doing a race where I could just get what I needed within reason. So he said, yeah, you really should have some bags at these certain spots that the crew can't get to. So he gave me these just like little duffel bags. And I threw the things that I thought I was going to need. And there was a number of times when I would get to that spot and I would open it up and I was like, oh my God, like I can't, where was that? Where was those glasses? Where was that, the gloves? Where was the light? I can't find anything here.
Yeah.
And so when it was said and done, I thought, wow, there's got to be something better than that. I mean, I looked around and I thought, okay, well then maybe I should just go buy a drop bag. But there was no such thing.
No, you can't go buy one of those.
Yeah. And so I looked around and all I saw were like diaper bags or really expensive camera bags, because in my mind I was thinking, well, okay, if I was going to have something like this where I have all my gear, it has to be organized. It has to be a certain way. It has to have a certain functionality. So when I was in college, I took an industrial design class. My main major the whole way through was fine art, but I did this design. I changed my major to design because my dad was afraid that if I was an artist, that I would starve.
Poor and starving. Yes. That's true.
Yeah. And so to please him, I took a semester and I says, okay, I'm going to try like industrial design, like product design. And I'm going to have a minor in business administration. I lasted a semester and I said, no, this isn't for me. And I went back to fine art, which my dad was okay with. At least, he felt like, hey, at least you tried.
Yeah, at least you had to go.
But when I was doing that, I designed a bag for my art supplies, because I would carry my art supplies in a fish tackle box.
Oh yeah.
And I'd ride my bike, from class and back to the dorms, and it was cumbersome. So I thought, oh wow, what if I do a backpack for my art supplies? And that was my project. And I ended up thinking, well, that's a great idea, but I don't have time to really do anything with it. So I made a very cheap patent where you do the patent form and you put it you mail it to yourself, and then you put it away in a safe deposit box. And that's like a fair, cheap patent. And my dad even did the schematics for me, and it just sat and sat and sat and sat, and I did nothing with it. And then after States, I thought, oh, there's that bag I made way back when. So I pulled it out, and fortunately, my wife Jenna's dad, he has some, connections with factories overseas. So just in conversation, I says, yeah, I have this idea. It would be awesome if I could get like a prototype. And he says, oh, I can do that. I can send it off and they'll make you a little prototype. And it was nothing other than just for myself.
Yeah.
And so I used it for a good number of events, and people started to see it and would ask, like, what is that? Where'd you get that? And I'd tell them I made this, and it was just an idea I had. And eventually I got to the point where I thought, wow, this is actually something that people would really use. And if I don't do something, I'm going to kick myself for not. And because I feel like I'm going to see somebody else somewhere down the road do this. And so I took a huge leap of faith, because again, I describe myself as more as an artist. I would never stand and say my business senses are the greatest, but fortunately, again, I surrounded myself with people who were able to help me take this idea and go forward with it. And that was 2012. And it's been a very fun adventure since then. Yeah.
And Victor, where did the name come from? Victory Sports Design. Is that from you, or is that a separate? Yes.
Yeah, no, that was me coming up with like, well, what am I going to call this? And, as I like to think that I'm creative, but I chose a very uncreative thing by saying, oh, well, my name's Victor. They're the Victory bags. What a concept. They're guaranteed to bring you victory. And funny thing behind that too, I used to hate my name. And I was maybe about 5 or 6. probably 6. And I told my mom how much I hated my name. And she said,
wow.
why? It goes, it just sounds like a weird Victor. Like, why can't I be Billy or John or Matt? Nobody else is Victor. And she said, do you realize though that Victor stands for victorious, victory, a conqueror.
Ooh, I like it.
I'm sorry. That's actually, I had a little verklempt moment there because I'm thinking back about that moment when my mom like made me realize like, oh, okay. I can go with that.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that was it. Victory Sportdesign, the victory bags. And, it was really because my mom made me realize like, oh, hey, you know what? That's not a bad name.
Well, that's definitely not a terrible way to name your company either. I think that's super cool. Well done. And sometimes the simplest things are the best, right? So
right, and it helps people remember my name.
Yes, exactly. Now, so Victor, maybe you can walk us through quickly, like what products do you have out there from a drop bag perspective at this point? Because there's a couple of different varieties, different sizes. And why would we have one rather than the other? What's the difference between them?
So going into it, I actually had one specific design that I began with, which was the design that took from the art supply bag. And that bag pretty much has been the flagship bag of the line. And it's called the right now it's the Bear 3.
Right.
And I looked at, well, what do races require? Because sometimes there's a specification. Like, we don't want you to bring anything that's bigger than 6 by 8 by, 12.
Yeah.
Size of a shoebox.
Yeah.
Anything more, we don't want that. Don't bring that. And so that's where I started. And I said, okay, let me make it those dimensions. Let me think about how I want to have, like, do I want water bottles here? Insulated water bottle holders. How do I want to? So I began to make a modular unit. And obviously, if you're going to start a business, you can't just have one thing. So then I thought, well, if I had something that was going to be half the size, that might be useful. If I was going to have something smaller, but I could change it so that it could become bigger, that could be useful. So then I just started to design different functionalities to the different bags. If you didn't want a big bag, you could have a smaller bag. If you wanted a bigger bag, then you had that option. And then eventually I had enough people say, I love this bag. I wish it were bigger. And I fought against that for a long time because I would tell them, you don't want bigger. Because the bigger you go, the more stuff you're going to put in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And when you're at an event, you don't need all that stuff.
Yeah. You spend all that time faffing about, looking around for stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, I've spoken with so many people. You really, you'd be surprised at how like just there's essentials. It really helps to have the bag. But sometimes if you start to look at, well, what do I really need? You start to realize, oh, actually, I can go with something smaller, more compact, and I can find everything much quicker and easier in something that's more manageable. But I did acquiesce to the request for a bigger bag, so I made 2 bigger bags called the Kodiak and the Grizzly, which are more like packs. I use the Grizzly to either go out to the backcountry, go up to Shasta and backpack, and my wife uses the Kodiak. It's a little bit more manageable, but it's it's TSA approved, but it's just right there where it's a good, solid travel pack that, can keep everything organized as well. And it's interesting because that's been a trend in the last, I want to say 6-7 years of people, manufacturers trying to make bags that do the exact same thing. So there's really, so if you look out there, you'll find all kinds of different bags now, but back then there was nothing.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be able to have done something that maybe you can consider like, oh, you were the first person to do that. And honestly, there were a lot of people who thought it was a terrible idea. There were people, and there's still people who go, well, you know what? I don't need to spend the money on that because I'll just bring my Ziploc bag and that's all. And that's great. I actually feel like if that's all you need, then perfect. You know, sometimes people are surprised that I don't try to sell them on the idea. I just feel like, oh, you know what? Whatever's going to work for you is going to work for you. And yeah, sometimes I find people who say, you know what? I'm fine with my little duffel bag. And then maybe like a year or two later, they'll come up and they'll say, you know, I actually got one of your bags. And I don't know why I was using that old duffel bag all those years.
I tell you. So, quick story. When I ran a race called the Cowboy 200 in 2022, and the guy who finished fourth came down from Alaska, and he showed up the day before the race, and he had no drop bags and nothing. He went to, I think it was a Dollar General, and he bought pillowcases, and he used pillowcases. He just shoved some stuff in a pillowcase and went and dropped it, and he still came fourth. So, I mean, yeah. You can do that kind of thing, but I think there's so many people now coming into the sport. It's having such a boom, and there's a lot of us towards the back of the pack. We're going to be out there quite a bit longer, and a lot of people like me, I'm, and this is why I love the products that you have too. I'm an organizer, so I like to have things in specific spots so that I know exactly where to go to get what I need, and I'm not faffing around in the dark with losing a headlamp and trying to dig around underneath stuff. So I absolutely loved the modular aspect of these bags. And I think that speaks to a lot of people too. So, and I've looked around, I looked for drop bags. You can get some really cheap kind of waterproof stuff, just kind of the sacks and those kind of work. But again, it's just all your stuff shoved in one place. And it's really difficult, especially when it's late at night or you're into your second or third day or more in some cases, and your head isn't working properly. It's super cool to have organized modular stuff. Even better if you can stick a label on it and you can read, this is, medical stuff right here, or food right here, or day 3, this section, whatever. Yeah. I think that's tremendous. And that's really why I love this. And hopefully, I know a lot of people out there have the bags, as we were talking before we came on air, and I'm sure a lot more will go buy them in the future. But I think these are fantastic, and they're totally different to anything else I've been able to find. It's hard still to find spot on drop bags out there, somebody selling drop bags specifically. So I love the product, and I think it's great. And
it also, for the crews too. I also get a lot of kind words from people who are like, okay, I don't run the ultras and I just crew my husband or my wife. And it helped me out because they'd come in and maybe they were in a fit, and you don't want them to be saying like, oh, come on, give me the thing I need.
Yeah, I got to go.
And so it's like, and even if they're not like, oh, I'm in 4th place or 5th place, even if they come in and they're like, oh my God, that was the roughest section. I feel like hell. I'm angry. And, and you're basically yelling at your crew. And so the last thing you want is the crew to, like, okay, so just give me my bottle. And you're like looking. Right, exactly. It's like, oh, here it is. And so it helps in those situations as well.
I definitely think from a speed and efficiency standpoint, whether you're front of the pack, middle pack, or back of the pack, at the front you're chasing, you're competitive, you want to be in and out of an aid station as fast as you can. So that speed and efficiency of knowing where things are and accessing them fast is a win right there. But same for mid and back of the pack, particularly in our case, if we're chasing cutoffs, definitely there are times when you need to be in and out of an aid station pretty quickly. And so again, just the same kind of thing, the ability to be able to find stuff, shove it in a pack and go with your 20 seconds that you've got before they shut the aid station.
Right.
Again, I just think the whole organizational aspect and the modular aspect of it is really cool. I love that. And I did want to ask too, as you've grown with the business, it's been a few years now. At this point, do you have any new products or innovations that we can expect to see in bags, or new types of bags? Is there anything you're working on right now or excited about that you feel compelled to share?
So, little personal part of the story. So my dad passed away 5 years ago. he passed away from dementia. And so I've been taking care of my mom since. And she was diagnosed with early onset dementia about 3 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
So thanks. Yeah. But she's okay, and I've been taking care of her. In that time, of course, we had this thing called the pandemic.
Yeah.
That sort of skewed a lot of things that impacted the business. And then we also had some pretty negative issues with the tariffs that were put on export imports. And that also put a big kick in our gut. So it was, that was a kick. And then the pandemic came. And so I actually, like 2021, I think it was the summer, I thought to myself, I don't know if we're going to make it, because it's like, this is, yes, I always tell everybody, it's just a bag. You can put all your gear, be it snow gear, going to the beach gear, the baby diaper bag, your camera stuff. It really has been, very specifically geared towards runners. And, what happened? There was no races. There was no running. So I started to think that maybe I should think about a different path with the company, something different, instead of trying to continue doing what I've been doing. So yeah, I have I'll keep it pseudo secret. So I have a good friend who he's here in the Bay Area, and he started making bags a while back.
Right.
When I met him, I said, "Oh, that's awesome. I like that idea. And I could use somebody close by who's making bags, because I can design it, but I'm no stitcher. I don't sew."
Yeah.
So we got to a point where we were working together, and we were developing a few things right before the pandemic happened. So some of those things had to go on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so now I'm thinking so he started a company called Unalome, and he does very boutique bags.
Cool.
Extremely boutique bags. But he and I were thinking, like, what if we took both of our things and put them together? And, it would really broaden the type of bags that we could offer. And, your experience with any kind of manufacturer and his experience with really having these really tight engineering skills, I just thought, like, this would be great. I would love doing this, as long as it allows me to continue what I like to say is having fun, like going out to races and being a part of them, and volunteering and seeing other people use something that I put out there that actually has, it's not something that's just you're going to throw away in like 5 years. That's the other thing. I really worked myself into a corner, because there are a lot of people who say, "Victor, I got your original bag and I'm still using it, and there's no reason for me to get a new one."
It's too good.
And I'm saying, hey, you know what? That's fine. That's okay. But yeah, so that's a little something that I'm really trying to put together, and as I said, like right now, life is, trying to balance the two things, the personal things in my life and the hopes to continue taking this creative thing that I've put out there and to see it still, continue.
Yeah, I love the focus on quality as well. I think that's lost in the world today as people make stuff. I think things are made to break so that you buy more of them. So I like to find companies that are doing something with clear quality, which, this is, I talked a couple of episodes ago to the folks over at Path Projects too. They make the apparel. And I think they're in Southern California. They're the same way. They're like, hey, deliberately trying to make quality versus quantity, and that's going to be part of our thing. Like, it's a quality product. We don't want it to break. So, but yeah, I love that approach.
And from the beginning, the other thing I realized was, well, these are my people. This is my tribe. I can't just like say, hey, I'm doing this thing. And then, I mean, I do run into, moments when somebody will say, oh, hey, like my zipper, this happened, or there was a little rip. And of course it's like, okay, what do you need? We'll take care of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just couldn't imagine putting something out that just didn't have quality, and still be out with these people saying, "Hey, how's your running?"
Yeah, and they go, "Oh, yeah."
So that was really important. I mean, that's always important. I think quality should always be important, no matter what it is you're doing.
Absolutely.
Be a quality of your workouts.
Yeah. I mean, but you should be proud of the thing you're putting out, whether that's a race, and the training you did, or whether it's a product or whatever it is. I think that's a great moniker for life. Just be proud of what you're doing. Put the effort in, make it quality, and whatever the outcome, at least you're proud of what you've got out there. So again, I think the focus on quality is something I really like. That's why I wanted to talk to you and to other folks out there making quality products that are used daily in our ultra community. And the bags are just kind of new to me, but I'm like, wow, like eyes wide open on this, because that's like my ideal thing. So I'm coming to you for a bag or two, that's for sure, at some point. Because these like amazing, folks. Go look at the website if you haven't gone. Go look at these bags. They're terrific.
And definitely, I say thank you, because the other thing too is because I felt like, well, I'm not gonna build a Patagonia or an Ultra Spire. I had to keep this pretty mom and pop.
Yeah.
And so there's still a lot of people who have never, ever seen the bags. I was at Broken Arrow a couple of weekends ago, and there was a lot of people who would come up and I'd say, "Have you seen these bags before?" And they'd be all, "No, never."
I go, what
so
is this? Yeah.
that's one thing where, some people would think that, oh, everybody knows about the Victory bags. But I'm like, oh, no, not really. Advertising is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So there's really only so much that we can sometimes do to kind of like really get the word out there. I know of one company that went all out a while back when they started. I'm not going to name names, but they went all out with advertising. Like you couldn't turn anywhere if you were in a running store or a race without seeing, there they are.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, what happened?
They wouldn't. Yeah.
They put so much into that, but the return with, the purchase of the products didn't match up. So I was always like, okay, I didn't continue that business administration semester, but I have to really think about how big do I get? If I get too much, then, I could easily fall on my face. So, and it's funny that sometimes I'll get like an email from someone who thinks we're a major corporation. And I just, oh, hey, no, it's me, Victor.
Yep.
Here, let me answer your question. I'm the only one here. My wife, Jenna, she could probably answer the question too, because she also works very closely with me. But yeah, just that aspect of things. I mean, even where I work is a big corporation, but one of the things we like to do, that whole personal nature of answering questions is starting to go as well with the advent of AI and call centers and that kind of thing. So just the idea that I can actually email or call and get a live answer almost from, in your case, the individual running the company, making the bags. I think that's wonderful. And I love it. So I'm definitely encouraging everyone to go check out the site, see what bag you like. I have a good friend who, I always love pacing people and crewing people. I mean, I'll crew strangers. I'll pace anybody. Some people are so surprised at how willing I am to just jump in and pace. And there was a young man who bought a bag from me years and years and years ago. Well, I say years and years. It hasn't been that long. And he was going to do a race out here in Marin. And I asked him, "Oh, that's awesome. Who's going to crew for you?" And he says, "Nobody." "Oh, who's going to pace?" "Nobody. I don't have one." I said, "Do you want one?" "Yeah, I think that would be helpful." And well, then do you want me to pace you? "I'll come on, pace you." And it was amazing. I mean, it's like when I get to help other people, to me, that is the most, I don't know. I get so much out of that. I personally get a lot out of it, especially seeing them succeed in whatever it is that they were, like whatever distance it was they were doing. But this other good friend we were in conversation and he said, this is Victor Ballesteros, and he owns the Victory bags. And if you buy a bag from him, not only will you get an awesome bag, but he'll come and he'll pace you at your race. So you get a bag and you get a pacer. What kind of, that's a deal.
Hey, I'm in for that. Yes. What a sales pitch. I love it. You don't get that from Ultraspire, do you? You don't get Carl Meltzer coming
I
to
don't think
pace you
so.
if you buy a pack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, talking about the ultra community, one of the other things, and don't get me wrong, the bags are awesome, but one of the other things I would love to talk to you about too is the Headlands 50K, since you're race director for that race. So, and again, as part of that, giving back and thinking about our community, have you always been involved in the Headlands 50K, or did you take over race directing duties? What kind of motivated that?
Yeah, it literally fell in my lap at the beginning of this year.
Okay.
The race was first run in '98. It's had a few inconsistencies. There's been some years where it just wasn't picked up. It's put on by one of our big local running clubs, the Tamalpa Runners. So I think there's always been a bit of an issue of holding on to somebody who is like, I'm going to be the race director for this race until I just can't do it anymore. So there was a little bit of a revolving door there, which kind of weird because we consider it to be an old school classic.
Yes.
I ran it in 2007. It was a national championship then. And it was a 50K that sort of propelled me into doing 50 milers and then progressing. Ever since, my running, I have to say, has taken a bit of a backseat because of personal life and things of that nature. So I still want to be with this community. And so I volunteer. I just, as much as I can, like, as I said, I'll crew or I'll pace. And so my wife and I started doing one of the major aid station of the race. We were the captains. And so we were doing that for a couple of years.
Right.
And then this year they found themselves in a position where they needed a new director. And I had always thought at some point, I think that would be one of the best ways for me to give back. And I never knew what race it was going to be. Would it be a race that I created, a race that already existed? And so when this happened, I thought, oh, perfect. That's it. This is going to be the race. But funny thing is, I didn't even realize I was being interviewed for the part. I just had a friend tell me that they're looking for a new director, and if I wanted to jump on a Zoom call and talk to the different people who are trying to figure this out. And by the second Zoom call, I thought, well, wait a minute, are you guys interviewing me? It sounds like an interview.
Yeah.
And I was a little trepidatious. I thought, wow, oh man, I wanted to do it. I've wanted to always do it, but can I do it?
Yeah.
That was just for a second. I only had that thought for a second. Then I thought like, oh yeah, I can do this.
Wow.
So it's been an interesting journey. I've had a very short amount of time to put the race on. So I don't think, usually you get, a year. The day after the race is done, you start your planning for the next year. Yeah. You have a nice stretch where you don't necessarily have to worry about everything every day. But I had about 4 months to put it all together.
Yikes.
So but it's coming together. I definitely had some sleepless nights, but it's coming together.
Well, that I think is the life of the race director, from what I understand from other people doing it. But Victor, tell us a little bit about the Headlands 50K. I think it's in Sausalito, right, or in that general area? Yeah, it's in an area that's so again, Mount Tamalpais is kind of like our big mountain landmark. Yeah, it's on the southern western slopes of the mountain. Okay, travels through area that's part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, the Marin Headlands, Muir Beach, up Mount Tam, down to Stinson, and back towards the Muir Beach area. It's got about 6,500 feet of gain. It's a challenging course, but it's also a very beautiful course. There's one specific area called Pirates Cove, and you come down into it. It's like I've actually, with the design of like the shirts and the hats, I've sort of focused on that area as kind of like an iconic little image. Yeah. For the race. Sort of a unique aspect, a standout thing. We're even brewing our own beer. We're going to have a special IPA. It's a rum infused IPA.
going to be called the Pirates Cove Rum Runner.
Get away.
And we're just going to do a small batch. We're going to have cans. We're going to have, image of, like, we put something together that's going to be really, really cool. So that's, just, and me walking into this event, it's always been, I called it old school. There's always been a very old school vibe to it. It's been very low key, no big arches. And, yes, they're starting to say, well, hey, sponsors, vendors, you guys can come down to the finish line so you can be a part of that. We have our ultra villages. And that's never really been a part of how the race has been done. So one of the things that I've been focused on is starting to introduce that kind of an atmosphere, more of like a little bit of a festival atmosphere, but still keep the roots together. But it's been an interesting journey. That's all I can say is it's been an interesting journey. I look a little bit more forward to next year because, again, it's going to be awesome. This year's going to be awesome. Nike Trail is our title sponsor. It's going to be $10,000 purse for
that's really good
for the front runners.
Yeah,
but we got some good things for the mid packers and the back of the packers. Have always, as we sponsor races, one of the things that I noticed was it's nice to give like a bag as an award to the winners.
Yeah.
And nothing against the winners. Sometimes they'll get the bag and they'll go, oh, cool, thanks. And they'll just kind of put it to the side. But I noticed that if you wait for like the very last runner, who we affectionately call the DFLs.
Yes. If
they come in and I have a bag and I go, you know what? This is yours. You earned this because you worked so hard. You worked just as hard in many different ways as all those people who finished however many hours ahead of you and are all dressed up and are just sitting there drinking a beer. Yeah. And their face lights up. Like they may be exhausted, but they're like, wait a minute, are you kidding me? No. Why? Yeah. And it's like, because you earned it. So that's a little thing that we've been doing for a while. And we decided to change it from the DFL award to the Rising Star Award.
Oh, I like it. I'm using that. Whenever I finish last, I'm calling myself the Rising Star from now on.
There you go.
That's right. Only way is up from there.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, there's so many little different things that I'm just really trying to put together that are coming together and that I'm excited to see. The race is in August 17th. Anyone out there who's still looking for a fun 50K destination race, if you're out there in Texas, come out to California. The weather's great here right now.
Yeah, I think it's quite a bit better than here right now. So that might be a wonderful time.
A little bit.
August might be a great time to get up to the Bay Area and get out to the Texas heat somewhere. I do think too, though, Victor, it's a really interesting. I don't know if it's a concept, but just this sort of these old school races now, and really, you might think of Western states coming this way as well. But like trying to balance that traditional old school race and the elements that made it awesome for so long with modern advancements that we're seeing in ultra running. Yeah. I think that's a tricky tightrope to walk because you want to keep the old school feel, but you may need to introduce, in your case, some of the sponsors might be, are there any other kind of modern advancements that you're looking to bring into this race, and sort of how can you balance that with the traditional aspect of this race? Because it's been going on so long.
Well, Western states is a perfect example. So I ran in 2009 and 10. And after that, I didn't. I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to Michigan Bluff. Michigan Bluff is like relatively halfway mark. I had a friend who lived there in the corner, small little neighborhood town. I'd bring my tent, my Victory Sportdesign tent, do a little guerrilla advertising, put it up so that people could have some shade.
Nice.
And we'd just hang out. And that was it. Hang out, cheer people on, tell anybody, hey, you want to crew under the tent with the shade? Go for it. And then there were a couple of friends who were announcing the runners as they came in. And about 4 years ago, I was just hanging out with them, and one of them had used the bathroom. And so she said, can you take the mic? And again, I'm a performer. I sang in a band, and I've acted on stage.
Perfect person. So yeah.
I knew so many people who were coming through. I didn't even have to look like at that's, Bill Smith.
The list, like, oh, right. Okay.
And I just had fun. And so she came back and she said, do you want to keep doing this?
Ah.
And I thought, yes, absolutely. But the main reason why I prefaced that story is because talking about the way the race has changed. So the introduction of the live stream, I think, really was something that started to make a huge shift in how these races, these older races, start to embrace modern, anything. Be it, like, let's have more sponsors here on site, but let's have this live feed. So Michigan Bluff used to always be kind of like the secret party. Ooh. Forest Hill, which is about mile 62, was kind of the big sort of a festival, semi-European feel. Just everybody was lying down the streets, and it was just a big rush to get there. But I don't like crowds, so I stayed away. I stayed in Michigan Bluff. So we started using a Starlink so that we had a really, right, a good signal out there. But and I used to always have just my tent. But when I got there, there was like 3 other tents. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Like tents with, sponsors' names
branding
on them and everything. Yeah. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then we went into the area where we set up for, our announcing table. And there was like 4 Starlinks on the lawn. And the woman who lives there, she came up and I said, wow, whose are these for? And she goes, well, they just dropped them off. They said it was for the live stream. It was for the timing mat. It was for the television guys. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting.
We are evolving.
And it was with the camera guys and gals running around and following all the different runners. And we watched the live feed, and honestly, they did a smashing job. I mean, really. And what it does, as is to be expected, it allows people who aren't going to be there to actually get a better feel of the race. Like, they had their drones. You could see the runners coming up. It was like watching Tour de France. It was like a very professional thing where you felt like, oh wow, I'm kind of there. So that, I think that shift is a very interesting one that will also, bring in some of what you're saying, the changes that, how do we introduce more of sponsors or running stores who just set up on the course, but still keep the organization as it, that feeling of what it's always been. It's like, where does it start to transition where suddenly it's like, oh, it's not that old school race anymore.
Right. And I think that's what's happening, right? When you have like Ironman and UTMB doing their sort of thing. And suddenly you've got big events like Western States pulling in, the Mountain Outpost guys to do all the fantastic coverage, which is truly awesome. But I think it's going to be a really interesting time as we progress over the next couple of years, where we figure out, okay, it's still, though, got to have the feel of being Western States old school race and other old school races too, without kind of overstepping that line. So I think it'll be interesting to see where that line eventually falls. Right. Where can I want to keep it Western States, but still make use of this modern technology to, I mean, it was brilliant. Watching the live stream, you get to see people at aid stations. You get to see the elite folks coming through and how they do their changes and what they look like as they're coming through, and the tension as they're asking how far ahead they are from the next guy. And you see the next guy coming through the field, and it's brilliant TV. Yeah. It's fantastic watching. But how far do you go before you start getting some of the complaints that we're seeing now online and places about the Ironman and the UTMBs, where it's so corporate that you start to lose the essence of what is ultra running, what is trail running, and this is Western States, so we got to keep that vibe somehow. Right. Yeah. And the organizations are really going to have to start looking at how big do they start to become. I mean, the
the lottery for Western states is just absolutely bonkers. Just how many people try to get in and how many people have tickets. Some people, I used to put my name in for a number of years, and I had like 85 tickets or something. And then I never got pulled. And then a friend who had like 3, they got pulled. And I just said, you know what? It's okay. I enjoy hanging out at Michigan Bluff.
Yeah. Have you always been at Michigan Bluff? Is that what you've stayed there throughout?
Yeah. Since 2011.
Have you seen any kind of cool moments? Have you witnessed anything fun or interesting while you've been hanging out at the aid station?
I mean, everything, like everyone coming through. I mean, anything specific? I don't know. I have a joke which is now becoming old because I've been doing the announcing for such a long time, and it has to do with Jim Walmsley, because he's been the favorite every single time he's jumped into the race. So a couple of years, like maybe it was last year, I said to everyone who was out on Michigan Bluff, I said, okay, Jim, some guy's coming. I think his name begins with a J, last name W. I don't know who he is. He's a dark horse. But when he comes in, I want everybody to hide. And when he comes through, jump out and say, surprise.
Get away.
They do it? No, but I was just, that's the thing I love to do there. Fun. I have fun, and that's, but yes, seeing those. Okay, actually, here, this is it. The final call, the final cutoff at Michigan Bluff. That to me has always been the most intense highlight. I mean, seeing all those guys come through, and whether they look awesome or don't look so great. Sometimes when you see one of the favorites come through and they look like hell, you go, oh, okay, well, that's gonna be interesting. But then once you get to the middle of the pack and the back of the pack, and you see those folks coming in, and and some of them, if they're struggling, you even sort of try to lift them up. I mean, I do when I'm on the mic, and I'll just try to say, hey, everybody, let's give this runner like all of our love, because they need it right now, and they got to get through, and they got to get to Forest Hill. But when it's there's a horn that's 20 minutes before the cutoff, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and the intensity just goes through the sky, because we're telling the people there, we're like, your runner has to get past that point by this time.
Yeah.
And if they're not here yet, just, you got to be ready, got to be ready for them. And for me at least, I feel like I want to see all those runners make it through. Yeah. And we'll get a report. Okay, there's 5 people who have gotten to the bottom, El Dorado Creek, and they're coming up the hill to Michigan Bluff. And we're waiting. And the anticipation is so intense. And there was a gal who came up, and she said, can you not be so intense? Because one of the crew members is crying because their person isn't here yet. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. So I said, look, they're going to get here. It's going to be fine. and even if they don't make it, they're still amazing superheroes. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, they've gotten this far, and that's amazing. Like, don't despair because this is the end of their day. Just revel with them in the effort that they put forth.
Yep.
And that's your celebration. Don't get stuck. I mean, yes, I get all, like, here we go. But yeah, don't think that just because they didn't achieve their goal, that it's all for nothing. So that kind of changed the atmosphere for the better. But watch.
Yeah, you've still had a wonderful day out.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
The race itself is the celebration in some respects. You've done all the training and you've got all the way through it. I mean, that I think is something in of itself to work through, and the race is the celebration, and however far you go in the race is your day, and that's cool. And I love that. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I've always been a way bigger fan of those folks who are fighting those big cutoffs than watching the winners. A lot of times people say, oh, hey, do you know who's running in the race? Like, and they're really talking about like the people who are going to be in the front. And I go, you know what? I know a few of the people who are going to be running, but I don't really pay attention to that. I spend more time really getting into, the middle of the race and the end of the race, especially the end of the race. Yeah.
It's a great place to be. And I think I've said a couple of times on the podcast, I would encourage anybody, whether you're a runner or not a runner, whoever you are, go and spend some time at the finish line of a ultra running race, especially one like Western States where you've got the golden hour, obviously. And that is just insane in of itself. One of these days I'm going to go there just to go to the finish line and be a part of that whole thing. But yeah, go and spend some time at the end, at the finish line of any ultra race. It's so uplifting and it's so emotional to see these people, especially in my world, the middle back of the pack world, to see folks who've been out there just battling all day long. They've put everything into it. They're coming up against the final cutoffs at aid stations and the finish line. It's so uplifting. It's such a great place to spend some time, be around the celebrations at the finish and just see the emotions coming through. What a fantastic place to be.
Yeah, and also the fact that even the elites, they're going to be there too. Like a lot of them, they don't like. I make a joke that marathon road runners, they come, they race, and they go home.
Yeah.
But ultra people, we stay, we party, we cheer each other on, and the majority of those folks, those fast folks, they'll be there at the end of the race to cheer those guys on too, which is what I think makes the whole ultra tribe like amazing to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, the beer at the end helps immensely. I mean, how many other road races do finish with a beer at the finish or mid race for some of us?
Right.
I like to do a beer at various aid stations. So yeah, I think that's wonderful. Well, Victor, I have 5 quick fire questions for you if you're open to it. Just real quick answers.
Okay.
Favorite trail race that you've ever run?
The Dipsy.
Dipsy. Brilliant. The quad?
Well, no, the single Dipsy. Again, it's the single Dipsy. It's a trail race. It's not an ultra, but it's... No. But yeah.
That's fine. Trail race is good. One piece of gear that you couldn't live without during a race?
Well, I was going to say my shorts.
Well, yeah. That would be challenging.
My shoes. I mean, I gear. I'm like for the person who made a gear bag. I don't really have a special. My victory bag.
On the shorts thing, I was just at a race called the Sticks in June, end of June, and there was a guy running there in a Speedo, so he didn't have shorts.
Oh,
so there you go. Yeah. So in shorts, not always necessary.
Exactly.
I don't know how the chafing was with that. We'll have to ask.
Squirrel's nut butter. You got to use a lot of squirrel's nut butter.
Plenty of, squirrel nut butter. If you could run any race in the world, what would you pick at the moment?
Tour de France.
Tour de France. Yeah. Second go for you on that one?
2.5. First time I went out there, they canceled midway because of weather. And then second time I went out, I got really sick on the plane over.
Oh no!
So it became a let's just experience it kind of event. Ooh, so I'd like to go back where I'm in better spirits. But yeah, that course out there is just that's amazing.
Spectacular over in that part of the world, over in the Alps there. Just
it's the northern Italy, south of France, Chamonix, and Courmayeur.
Switzerland, France, Italy, the whole corner there is just insane. So beautiful. All right, Victor, craziest thing you've ever seen or experienced personally during an ultra?
Hallucinating. The things I've seen while I was hallucinating and doing the 200 milers and especially the Tahoe 200. I mean, what did I see? I saw a house with people on the top having a party. Whoa. And I sat there thinking like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And then at some point, after the race was over, I had done a training run and I went through there and I realized there's no house here. There's nothing here. But what I saw was like a dream, vivid. It was a house, people on top having a party. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's quite cool, actually. I've heard worse, that's for sure. But yeah, house for the party is good. And lastly, future goals as a runner, if you're going to get back into that, and I think you've already touched on this some, as a business owner.
Future goals. So this is kind of, so I would say, to go back get back to Tour de France. I really, really, really want to. But I've had this very interesting goal that I would love to try and do. I would love to do a double Western States.
Ooh.
And I've actually spoken
that?
to Craig. I've spoken to Craig Thornley, the race director, about it.
Like an out and back?
It's so start at the finish, go all the way to the start, but be an official entrant. Be an official entrant for the race. Get there with just enough time. Give yourself a little bit, like not like a day or to like, okay, I went this way, but really to turn it more into a 200 miler by getting to the finish and like, okay, here we go. Getting to the start and then saying, okay, here we go. Let's go to the finish.
Yeah, and then basically race back with support.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of a fun, cool, weird thing to do.
Brilliant. Well, you heard it here first, folks. If that becomes a thing, you heard Victor say it here first. Absolutely. We got the exclusive.
Yes, and honestly, I think like Craig said, oh, that sounds like a fun, crazy idea. But then again, I imagine like people started to think like, hey, this is something we could do. He might say, no, no. Victor, what did you start?
Yeah, maybe not until it becomes official, but okay.
Right.
I love it. Now, Victor, one of the other things we do on the show here is encourage guests to pick a song to add to the free Spotify Choose to Endure playlist. Typically, it's something to lift you up or some song that motivates you or just something to keep you moving while you're out on the trail. Now, did you have a song that really speaks to you from a running perspective? And if so, what is it and why does it resonate with you?
So I don't have a song that's actually that comes to me that is a song that is somebody else's written. I do have a song that I wrote.
Yeah.
And song's called Give It All Away.
Okay.
It was really sort of about a relationship, but in the broader sense, it's about taking the things that come to you, the experiences that come to you, but also putting stuff back out into the world, giving yourself back out to the world. And so the reason that came to my mind was because I just sort of thinking of this whole theme of, I was able to take something in with my experiences, trail running and ultra running. And then I'm at a point where like, now I'm just sort of trying to give it back. So, to give it all away, when I say give it all away in terms of the song, it's not just like, give it all away, but give something back.
Yeah.
You take the love, you give the love back. So.
Brilliant. I think that is totally applicable to the ultra scene and very commendable. And it's your own song. So I think
hope you like it.
That's wonderful. We've never had somebody with their own song before. So that's a first. And I absolutely love the context that you put around it and the perspective that you bring. So thank you for picking that and for sharing your really incredible journey and your insights with us today from the inception of Victory Sportdesign and the impact that it's having on the ultra running community to the unique challenges of Headlands, 50K, and your invaluable experiences at Western States. I mean, it's clear to me, at least, that your contributions to the sport go way beyond your own personal achievements. Your dedication to making the sport more accessible, more enjoyable for runners, I think that's pretty inspiring. So thank you on behalf of everybody out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, too, we're definitely going to appreciate your advice and your stories. I hope they deeply resonate with you guys out there listening. Victor, if folks have more, they want to go learn more about Victory Sportdesign or the Headlands 50K, if they're interested in heading out in August to participate in that, where can they go to find more? Or next year, yes, indeed. Where can they go to find more information?
So Headlands 50K. I don't know if you'll have like links when the podcast comes out, but Headlands 50K and Victory Sportdesign.
Perfect. So folks, get out there, go on the internet, check out those sites, if you will, while you're out there doing that. Don't forget to subscribe, if I can talk properly, to this show as well. Get notified each time a new episode comes out, and of course, follow, share, and review. That would be very much appreciated. Doing any of those things really helps promote the podcast, which in turn helps get the word out and increases chances of other runners like you and I finding the information that awesome guests like Victor give up their time to come on here and share with us. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook and over at choosetoendure.com. So be sure to head over to any of those spots, check us out, send a message, say hello, or suggest a topic for the podcast if you have a moment. I definitely love getting all those interactions. That's what this is all about. We're trying to share information. We're trying to provide things of value out to the community. So until next time, go buy a Victory Sportdesign drop bag. Go sign up for the Headlands 50K so that you can continue to run long, run strong, and keep choosing to endure.